time. I give the call to the honourable member for Fisher.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The appropriation bills before us today demonstrate the stark choice which is going to face the people of Australia at the next election. It will be a choice between a Turnbull government, which delivers sober reform and a strong economy, and an opposition that arrogantly parades its false and vacuous promises. It will be a choice between responsible government for all and naked self-interest. Thank you. On this side of the House, we've delivered 1 million more jobs, record bulk billing rates, and we're delivering $75 billion worth of infrastructure our nation desperately needs. On that side, they've kowtowed to law-breaking unions, shielded members who should never have taken a seat in this place, and tried to set Australians against each other in an outdated and divisive class war. Wait, I've got more about that. And why? Because on this side of the House, we have real leaders who have shifted the debate on everything from stopping illegal immigration to fixing our declining school standards. The Leader of the Opposition, on the other hand, Deputy Speaker, well, he's just shifty. 3 years ago, the Hayden Royal Commission saw straight through this Leader of the Opposition. The Commission's counsel assisting called him evasive on the witness stand, while the Commissioner himself said that his non-responsive approach to giving evidence called into question his very credibility. Since that Royal Commission, we've had the question of this Leader of the Opposition's credibility settled once and for all. He has none. You simply can't trust a word he says. Sadly, to the detriment of this House and our nation's democracy, we have seen ample evidence of that over recent months. There's no doubt, Deputy Speaker, that the Leader of the Opposition read the same court decisions as the rest of us when it came to the test for eligibility under Section 44 of the Constitution. He knew what it meant as well as the rest of us. He knew that there was a two-stage test for those who held dual citizenship, and that all reasonable steps that they parroted on about applied only when a foreign law operates irremediably to prevent an Australian citizen from renouncing his or her citizenship, and they still can't accept the High Court's decision. He knew that the law was firmly established, just as the court has held in Sykes and Cleary and later reaffirmed in Re Canavan, delivered on the 27th of October 2017. Yet for 6 months, he misled the Australian public and dishonestly maintained that no fewer than 4 of his members of parliament were eligible to represent their local constituents when clearly they were not. Months of Labor parliamentary salaries and perks were paid out, while my colleagues on this side of the House in fact did the right thing and resigned or referred themselves to the High Court immediately. He went further, of course. Famously, he gave no less than a rolled gold guarantee that all Labor members were eligible. Well, the people of Australia and the unfortunate constituents of Fremantle, Braddon and Longman know what that guarantee was worth now. They know how much trust they can place in the Leader of the Opposition. But it's always been that way with him, Mr Deputy Speaker. What about the workers of Cleanavet, when the Leader of the Opposition stripped away their pay and conditions while the AWU received secret payments of $75,000 for those arrangements? And what about the workers at Chiquita Mushrooms, when the Leader of the Opposition sold them out in return for secret $4,000 a month training payments to his union? They quickly found out how much credibility he had as an advocate for the working people. And who could forget Labor's Mediscare campaign in the 2016 election? Even his own colleagues can't trust him, Mr Deputy Speaker. Former Prime Minister Rudd learnt that the hard way. No doubt he trusted his then Employment Minister when that minister pretended to be a loyal Cabinet colleague. As Mr Rudd soon discovered, trust in this Leader of the Opposition is often misplaced. No doubt the woman who replaced him, former Prime Minister Gillard, trusted now the Leader of the Opposition, when he threw his support behind her. We all know how long that lasted, Mr Deputy Speaker. Up until the spill, he told reporters, "I was going to support the Prime Minister." There you have it, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Leader of the Opposition was going to be loyal. He was going to tell the truth, right up until the moment it was his self-interest that changed his mind. The workers he claims to represent, the people of Australia, his own closest colleagues, they all know that this Leader of the Opposition will do anything, say anything, double-cross anyone to claw his way to the top. Whatever it takes. And at what cost, Deputy Speaker? We began to learn that back in 2013. In his desperate efforts to gain the then CFMEU's support, the Leader of the Opposition was once again ready to promise almost anything to the detriment of his party and the Australian people. He agreed to the CFMEU's demands that he oppose any industry-specific regulator, including the one he himself established in 2012. He agreed to oppose any form of building code, despite the clearly established need. He agreed to oppose any kind of compulsory evidence-gathering powers for a regulator in the building industry, despite the ever-mounting evidence, now proven, of staggeringly widespread union illegality. Having made his deal with the lawless construction union and linked his self-interest to theirs, it is difficult to know what representatives of the CFMMEU would have to do before the Leader of the Opposition would not stand next to them. Justice Geoffrey Flick said of them, and I quote, "It is difficult, if not impossible, to envisage any worse conduct than that pursued by the CFMEU. This is a union which has been fined almost $15 million, far more than has ever been seen before. It's an organisation with around 70 officials personally before the courts. Their boss, John Setka, by the way, has been widely congratulated by those opposite for having blackmail charges dropped last week. Mr Deputy Speaker, everyone knows that it's not unusual at all for the DPP to drop charges in legal proceedings. But what is unquestionable is that John Setka has been found guilty of 59 separate offences, including assault and theft, and jailed twice, in fact, for contempt of court. He's even admitted that illegal activity is at the heart of the way he does business. Channeling ACTU Secretary Sally McManus, Mr Setka told Sky News last week, "We get fantastic pay rises and good conditions for our members because we fight it outside the law." Even the Leader of the Opposition's own colleagues know how wrong and self-serving his continued support for the CFMMEU is. Labor's hero, former Prime Minister and ACTU boss Bob Hawke, has called the construction union's behaviour appalling and said that he would not tolerate it. He said, quote, "I would throw them out." He told The Australian in 2016, just as he himself threw out its predecessor, the Builders Labourers Federation. And for a Labor leader with some backbone today, Mr Deputy Speaker, even Kevin Rudd has called for the CFMMEU to be expelled from affiliation with Labor and for the influence of trade union factions in the party to be reduced. Even Peter Beattie said last week that he would refuse CFMEU donations if he were the leader. Yet there he is, this Leader of the Opposition, telling CFMEU members at the Oakey Creek North mine site, where threats, including threats to rape children and intimidation, had been rife, that he said, and I quote, "The privilege for us today is to be in your company," unquote. There he is, defending the CFMMEU day in, day out, just like his job depended on it. And that's because it does. Mr Deputy Speaker, $11 million in donations were paid to Labor since 2001, the factional support of its many active members. This Leader of the Opposition is owned lock, stock and barrel by the CFMMEU. The most sickening part of all of this is the fact that the Leader of the Opposition peddles his divisive, dishonest and exploitative envy-mongering under the banner of a fair go. It's a cynical and nauseating distortion of what we all believe is at the heart of our uniquely Australian egalitarian way of life. Where, Deputy Speaker, is the Leader of the Opposition's fair go when he is slugging senior Australians who have worked and saved their whole lives with a new multi-billion-dollar retiree tax? Where's the fair go for 2.6 million Australians with APRA-regulated superannuation accounts? What clever excuse is he going to give them when it comes time to explain why he has pillaged $3.75 billion from their hard-earned savings? Where's the fair go for the millions of Australians whose jobs would be put at risk by the insatiable hunger of this Leader of the Opposition for more and more tax and his desire for the keys to the lodge? If even what passes for a moderate version of Labor's tax plan were enacted, there would be 1.4 million Australian workers put at risk. There would still be thousands of businesses whose investment decisions had been undermined overnight. It would still mean many thousands of unemployed or underemployed Australians who would no longer have the opportunity to take up one of the new jobs created by our investment. What clever weasel words will the Leader of the Opposition use when it comes time to explain to our young people why there are no jobs for them? And where was the fair go for the workers at Clean Event or at Chiquita Mushrooms when their union secretary gave away their pay and their conditions for his union's benefit? Whether he's the secretary of the AWU or the Leader of the Opposition, he has only one guiding principle, Mr Deputy Speaker. That is selling out the people he's meant to represent in the interests of his own. That's how he ran the AWU back then. It's how he's running the Labor Party today. It will be how he runs the country if he is ever allowed to occupy the lodge. In the end, there's only one Australian the Leader of the Opposition is looking out for. That is the Leader of the Opposition himself. Only one standard to which he holds his words and his actions, and that is naked self-interest. His colleagues know that. Those present here tonight know that. His supporters know that. And the people of Australia know that. They've seen through this shifty Leader of the Opposition, and when they have the chance next year, they will, as we should today, shun his empty politics of selfishness and division and support the Turnbull government's plan for a stronger, more prosperous Australia.